morning, and yeah, beautiful summer day, perfect tick weather, and yeah, I can't think of a better way to start the day than by having a very robust discussion of infectious disease. So let's talk about the different players that we have. Yes, that gentleman said that, yeah, many years, and in fact, as I look around the room here, there's at least 2 baby boomers here, all right? And including myself, you know who you are. And when we were kids, tick identification was easy because all we had was the good old American dog tick, that thing that would attach to us and then get to the size of a grape. And we have dog ticks around here. They're fairly common throughout southeastern Massachusetts, but I consider them really more of an annoyance than a real direct health threat, even though they can vector the pathogens that cause Rocky Mountain fever and tularemia, which can be pretty serious. And in my 12 years here, we have had 1 case of Rocky Mountain spotted fever on the Cape out in Brewster, a 10-year-old girl. Fortunately, she was diagnosed correctly, medevac to Boston, and successfully treated. And then when we went and did surveillance of our tick populations here in the southeastern part of the state, we didn't find that pathogen. So it just tells me that it's out there, but at a really low level. So the exposure risk is considerably less. So you might recognize, that's a dog tick right there, that kind of creamy brown creature. Yeah, this is my PowerPoint presentation for today. And stuff. And then we have this new tick in town. You might see that tick with the white dot on our back. How many of you have heard of the Lone Star tick? Yeah, that is the new tick in town. Well, not quite the newest one. We have one, I think it's here, but it's really not going to be a big deal for us. But Lone Star tick, I was asked to go out to Sandy Neck Beach Park in West Barnstable, and the park staff, they were seeing a tick they didn't recognize. And so I went out there, and that's a 6-mile-long peninsula. And I found Lone Star tick there from one end of that place to the other. They own that piece of real estate, and they have found a very nice home here on Cape Cod. We have found it, from Bourne, Falmouth, all the way out to, Truro. So they've taken up residence, and their populations are on the growth mode. This is tick. If you have never encountered a Lone Star tick, I will tell you it's very, very different. Ma'am, you look like you're sitting at a Stephen King film festival. You have this look of horror, and like, what's this guy going on? And so, yeah, it's close your ears on this one. This tick actually, most ticks are ambush predators. They wait for dinner to bump into them, and they'll attach and then start looking for a place to climb and latch on. These Lone Star ticks, they're hunting ticks, all right? These ticks have really good vision, and they can run. And they can run with the speed of a spider. I've seen this in action. And so if they see you from, like, say, 20 feet away, they're going to come rolling at you like a little race car. Now, the pathogen profile, they don't cause Lyme disease, okay? They don't transmit that bug. But they've got their own set of diseases that are unique to it, including tularemia and ehrlichiosis, which can be pretty serious. The only pathogen we have found in the Lone Star tick is it causes stari, S-T-A-R-I, type of rash disease with flu-like symptoms. And I know Cape Cod Hospital has diagnosed and treated people for stari. But the game changer here, and buckle your seatbelt on this one, the bite of a Lone Star tick can trigger an allergy to red meat consumption. All right, and this can be as mild as hives, but go all the way to anaphylactic shock. All right, this is EpiPen time, and I know we've had that happen here on the Cape, and it's not just beef, but it's pork, lamb, and even beef-derived byproducts like beef-derived gelatin. And if you're a food label reader, like I am, beef-derived gelatin is in a lot of different processed foods, okay? And this food allergy has been extended now to high-fat dairy products like ice cream, all right? And who can imagine living on Cape Cod and you can't eat ice cream, maybe for the rest of your life? That's just so unfair, all right? So this thing is getting traction. It's not going away anytime soon. And the interesting thing is we found it pretty much throughout the Cape now. We're pretty confident it was introduced by migratory birds. Sandy neck is a perfect flyway for birds that migrate. So it's easy to think about migrating birds picking up these Lone Star ticks on one of the islands where they were infested for years, drop them off in Sandy Neck, and then there are animals on the ground like coyotes. And do we have wild turkeys here in Bourne?
Yeah.
Okay. When they were first describing the Lone Star tick, they almost named it the turkey tick because that is a preferred host. Okay, so those birds that not only move them around, but turkeys are also a reservoir host for that Lyme bacteria. All right, so they're a big part. They're an important part of our ecosystem now, and then the tick that's really most significant to us is still the deer tick. The more accurate name for this tick is called the black-legged tick. And the reason for that is that this thing has been documented to be associated with 125 different vertebrate hosts. So it's not just about deer, it's not just about mice. This is a complex ecosystem. There's a lot of moving parts. Now the rodents we have are key in this whole system because they have the ability to harbor that Lyme disease bacteria and transmit it back into the tick population. So it's kind of like microbial ping pong. So things like mice and chipmunks and some other rodents, but mice and chipmunks are the big source of this now. So birds, the birds can move these ticks around pretty good distances, and there's some birds that are competent reservoir hosts for that Lyme bacteria, like our friend the turkey. But also we have songbirds like our American robin. They carry that Lyme bacteria as well. And then we've got a whole bunch of creatures that we call them incompetent hosts. All right, they can't infect ticks. So deer do not infect ticks, raccoons don't, possums don't, but they can provide a blood meal and help keep that tick population rolling along. Now, an interesting discovery really recently out at UMass Amherst is they discovered that if they inject that bacteria that causes Lyme into deer blood, there's some chemical factor inside the deer blood that takes that bacteria and just crushes it to nothing. All right? So the people at UMass, they feel like they with some more research, there might be a therapeutic benefit to some component of deer blood that's going to maybe help people that are chronically ill from this disease, because most people can be fixed up with 3 or 4 weeks of antibiotic like doxycycline, but there are people that are sick for long periods of time. It's called chronic Lyme, but CDC and the medical community is divided. CDC does not believe in chronic Lyme. You can be sick for 10 years from Lyme, and CDC is saying it's a post-Lyme disease injury that you receive. But there's research that shows that bacteria can survive 4 weeks of antibiotic challenge. So there's things in the literature that suggest to me that chronic Lyme probably is something that is real. It's just the medical community has to catch up with the whole process. So deer ticks aren't like these Lone Star ticks, all right? Deer ticks, they are an ambush predator. So they wait for you to come to them. And so Lone Star ticks, you actually could walk across this open lawn and they can survive out in these open sunny areas. So as they become more abundant, our whole thinking that you have to go into the edges of the yard or the woods, it kind of changes our exposure thinking for a while, because Lone Stars, we know they can survive hot sunny conditions. Well, deer ticks can't. Okay, so if you look at your average lawn, open sunny areas, so short grass, direct sunlight, high temperatures, low humidity, deer ticks aren't going to survive out there. But the minute you get to the edge of the yard that might be in like partial shade, and you get a transition to brush and shade trees and leaf litter, so much lower temperatures, much higher ambient humidity, that's where you're going to find deer ticks. And you don't have to go to a state park to get a deer tick bite. Surveillance work in Connecticut showed that 2/3 of the people that submit ticks for identification and testing get them from their own backyards. So ticks and gardening, the perfect marriage, okay? All right, risk of getting a tick bite. It's basically 365 days a year, all right? I would routinely get calls from the media in the spring, like, Larry, when's tick season gonna start? Waiting for the headline. And I say, well, tick season actually goes from January 1st to December 31st. Anytime you have temperatures above freezing and a break in snow cover, you're going to have deer ticks that can attach to you. And we see this if you look at the case data in Massachusetts, there are cases of Lyme disease in January, February, March, all the way to November and December. So there's a risk of getting a tick bite year round, but it's the summer months that's really the high risk period, which is, right now. Because from, say, September till about May, what's out there is the adult stage deer ticks. And if you look at them, they're about the size of a sesame seed. So, pretty visible. Even with my failing eyesight at age 67, I can still see something that small. But the stage of the deer tick that's out there right now, and will be with us until middle of August, are the Nymph Stage ticks. And they are about the size of a poppy seed. So yeah, something that tiny with 8 legs, a really bad attitude that can plant you on your butt for a long, long time, all right? And if we look at the data on Lyme disease, 85% of all tick-borne diseases occur during the summer months, when that nymph stage of the tick is out there. So you need to be vigilant year round, but really be on our game right now. And not everybody's impacted equally by Lyme. If you look at the distribution by age, kids under the age of 10 have the highest incidence rate of Lyme in the state. So my message to parents is that these data tell me everything we've been doing up to this point in time isn't working, all right? And I'm going to give you some recommendations for how to protect our children better. You might not like them, but they're going to be effective. And then the incidence rate goes down for people in their 20-somethings and like you, okay, and 30-somethings. And I learned to read a room, okay, when I come to a meeting, and then the incidence rates for people in their 40s, 50s, and older, it goes up. So when you're younger, your immune system is operating at peak condition, and people are starting careers, they're starting families, there's not as much exposure risk. But as we get older, our immune system is starting to play the back nine, to use a golf analogy, and there's more leisure time activity like gardening and golf and things like that. So you see this bimodal distribution of cases of Lyme, all right? So the headline here, though, with deer ticks, it's not just about Lyme disease anymore, all right? We're up to 5 different pathogens that we know of, all right? There might be things ticks are transmitting that are making people sick that just haven't been identified yet or associated, but we got 5 things to think about now. So we have Lyme, first and foremost, that's the most prevalent tick-borne disease we have to deal with. But there's a couple of other emerging diseases. Babesiosis, which some of you may have heard of, Babesiosis. B-A-B. Babesiosis. It kind of rolls off the tongue after a while. But it's like getting malaria, all right? It's a parasite that invades your red blood cells. And so as it reproduces, your red blood cells are popping like little water balloons. And so your plate counts will drop like a rock off a cliff. And unlike Lyme disease, babesiosis can be directly fatal. There's another pathogen that invades a type of your white blood cells and causes anaplasmosis. And anaplasmosis on the surface looks a lot like Lyme, high fever, achy joints, and that causes problems with getting a diagnosis, because the doctor might be looking at you thinking Lyme disease. You're not flipping a positive test, but you just might have anaplasmosis, all right? And in the last 10 years or so, we know we have cases of relapsing fever. So it's a bacteria that's related to the Lyme bacteria. And we see it in a small percentage of the ticks here on the Cape, but you know, it has some people have come down with this. And the last one that we found in the last 12 years is Powassan virus, okay? And Powassan, the number of cases is actually quite low, but it was brought to my attention 10 years ago that in the last 15 years, there's been about 20 cases of Powassan in the state, and it's fatal in about 10% of the cases, okay? And 2 of those fatalities were on Cape Cod, all right? One in Falmouth and one in Sandwich. So we did surveillance for that virus, and we were kind of stunned because there's a small number of cases, but we find that virus from Falmouth all the way out to Truro, all right, at infection rates as high as 10%. So there's a considerable exposure risk to the, to this virus, but most people are asymptomatic. So we think about it like West Nile virus and mosquitoes. A lot of people can be exposed to West Nile and never get sick. And in the case of Powassan, when it goes neuroinvasive, that's when things get really dicey, all right? So we get 5 diseases that we know of. Transmission time. There's a lot of misinformation about that out there. There is a rule of thumb supported by a lot of good science that if a tick is on you for less than 24 hours, the risk of transmission is low. It's not 0, but it's low. And after 24 hours, and certainly after 48 hours, risk of transmission ramps up considerably. The difference here is Powassan virus. It has a transmission time of 15 minutes. So just shortly, it's like, got your attention, didn't I? Boy, this corner of the room, you're going to walk out of here with...
I'm never leaving my house again.
We're going to get to that because people shouldn't be holed up there in their house. I want people to be tick aware, but not tick afraid, all right? Because there are things we can do to head these things off. So transmission time. Yeah, so prompt removal is really what you need to consider. So I tell people when you come in from an outdoor activity, it's tick check time. So throw those clothes in the dryer for 20 minutes. That's all it takes to kill any ticks that are on them. And do a tick check. And if you do have a tick attached, removal. There's a lot of stuff out there. I mean, social media has its pluses and minuses. The minus part of social media is that bad information flies fast and far. And regarding tick removal, yeah, and I see you nodding your head, absolutely true. You deal with this all the time, I'm sure. So the techniques like dish detergent or Vaseline or a flaming match, those are just things not to remove a tick. Pointy tweezers, that's all it takes. But the other piece of misinformation out there, if you use big fat blunt tweezers and you squish that tick, you're going to mainline that Lyme bacteria into you. Well, tick plumbing doesn't work like that, all right? Ticks have a pharyngeal valve, so things are only one way. So ticks, it's like if you use tweezers, it'll agitate the tick and it'll throw up. Well, that doesn't happen, okay? And if you crush that tick, you just might get a local infection at the site of the bite, but you're not going to mainline bad stuff into you, okay? That just doesn't happen. So pointy tweezers, just grab that tick by the head and pry gently straight up, and you should get most of it. They don't burrow their heads in there. If you see something left behind, they have a beak of a mouth part. This is a great prop, huh? Yeah, I had my hip replaced just so I could do this meeting, with a cane. But that's the only part. If something breaks off, it's just that beak of a mouth part, and that beak doesn't transmit bacteria. So it's like a wood splinter. Just hit it with a little Neosporin, and it's going to dissolve in a couple days. So then, what do you do with that tick after you remove it? Okay. Yeah, survey says the flush. That's what most people do. But the reason for, you said plastic bag?
Yeah.
Very smart, very smart. Because saving that tick, like we do with our research ticks, you can send that lab to a lab at UMass Amherst and get it analyzed for what you were potentially exposed to, all right? So the website is tickreport.com. And for $50, it'll analyze for the pathogens that not only cause Lyme, but babesiosis, anaplasmosis, and relapsing fever. All right. So the reason I think that's a good service is that initially doctors, when we talked about tick testing, any doctors in here? Okay. One of the things that I've learned about doctors is they know everything. Okay? Or they think they know everything. So when we started talking about tick testing, they were pretty, lukewarm about it. Like, Larry, go get a real job and leave the medical stuff to us. And now there are some doctors that are warming up to this idea of having a tick tested, because for the patient, it's solid data. Unlike the human blood test for Lyme disease, this test they do at UMass is 99.9% accurate, all right? It's infallible data. And so from the patient standpoint, you have data in hand, hard data, that you were potentially exposed to maybe the bug that causes Lyme, but maybe babesiosis or anaplasmosis, because we find that about 10 or 11% of the ticks that we've tested are co-infected, meaning they're packing more than one bug. And you can get more than one of these diseases at the same time. Yeah, question?
I'm sorry, because I know I'll forget it, but I don't ask. So when you get tested for Lyme disease, a blood test to see if you have it, does it test for all those other offshoots of what you're mentioning, or just Lyme disease?
Just Lyme.
And there's no way to, if you're questioning Lyme disease, are they checking off these other possibilities to also check for it too, or is there not enough research out there on them?
No, it's you have to be your own strong advocate.
So you really have to send and pay $50 to.
Yeah, I mean now you have data that says you might want to test me for babesiosis as well, because the tick was packing that thing. It doesn't necessarily mean. And that was the argument against testing a tick. It doesn't, just because it's positive doesn't mean you're going to get sick. Well, duh, we know that. It's a matter how long that tick was attached to you is the other piece of that. And they'll take pictures and send it back to you showing you an estimate of the feeding state of the tick. So it'll show whether the tick was on you for maybe 24 hours, but also if it was on you for 3 or 4 days and transmission occurs there. The tick testing, I think, is a good tool, and we've been recommending this now from the time I've been with Extension, and so for $50, it's a good investment. But for a doctor that's savvy enough to think about these data, they can now look at these data and say, what should I be looking for in my patient? What for a clinical presentation? What should they be showing to me if I'm thinking, maybe it's babesiosis going on in combination with Lyme or anaplasmosis. So there are some doctors now that are not doing anything immediately for patients until they see a copy of the tick report, and I think that's good news. We're making progress here. Okay, but we don't want you to have to send ticks out to get testing. I don't want you to get bitten in the first place, all right? So let's talk about prevention, all right? And so you can go outside again, all right? Fair enough, fair enough. Well, I talk about repellents quite a bit as a first-line defense. I mean, it's, the usual boilerplate recommendations, the long pants tucked into your socks. well, this is, July 1st. It's, long pants tucked into socks. That's not a fashion statement a lot of people want to make. But if you use a good skin repellent, with something 20, 30% DEET, those are adequate to protect your skin. There are some people that are very DEET averse, that thinking that they're reading online, DEET causes cancer, DEET is an endocrine disruptor, and everything's an endocrine disruptor at some level of consumption. But if you look at the track record, the tox record on DEET, it's been around since World War II. The tox record on DEET is squeaky clean. And if you want information, the real skinny on any pesticide, you go to the National Pesticide Information Center. And it's a collaboration between the EPA and Oregon State University. And so they take all the science on every single pesticide that's registered, and they write up these really good, really informative fact sheets. So skin repellents are adequate. So if you don't like DEET because of the feel on your skin, there are DEET alternatives like picaridin or oil of menthol eucalyptus. And then there's a bunch of products out there that are labeled all natural, all right? And the problem with those products is that they really resonate with soccer moms and soccer dads and soccer grandparents, because now I'm thinking I'm using something safe and effective on my kids, and nothing could be further from the truth. A product like DEET or picaridin, those are EPA registered products, meaning if the label says it repels ticks and mosquitoes for 6 hours, there are data on file at EPA to support that claim. These all-natural products, they're EPA registration exempt, meaning they don't have to do any testing at all. They are completely fraudulent, and the Federal Trade Commission should just blow those products off the shelf like they're doing with fraudulent bedbug products and some other things out there. So they're bad news. All right, if you want the home run tactic, it's another repellent, but it's for treating clothing. So it's treating pants and socks and footwear, and it contains the active ingredient permethrin, all right? Have any of you guys heard of permethrin before? Yep, few of you. It is the most effective tool in the box that we have, all right? When I was first doing some research with this product, what I found is that if a tick is exposed to a treated fabric surface for 60 seconds, that tick is guaranteed to die. And as Martha says, that's a good thing, all right? And the tick might die in 5 minutes, might take 10 minutes, but the outcome is guaranteed. That tick is not going to survive that exposure. And the biggest problem for us on Cape Cod was finding the product. Once I found out how good it was, there was only one gun shop in downtown Hyannis that was selling it. So I met with all the managers or owners of all the major garden centers on the Cape, and I convinced them to stock this product. And I go into the garden centers periodically, and I see, okay, we've got product. How are sales? And in recent years, they're out of stock more than in stock. It is flying off the shelf. And I got my report card on this about 5 years ago. I received a call from Dr. David Scale at the Harvard School of Medicine. And he said they were studying trends on diseases like Lyme. And when they got to Lyme, they saw that Cape Cod, Barnstable County, we are the only county in the state where the incidence rate of Lyme is not going up. And they said, whatever you guys are talking to people about out there, keep doing it because it's working. And so that was really, really good news. So from an exposure standpoint, because I'm telling parents to put their kids in clothing treated with a synthetic chemical insecticide. And I have to remind people that, remember, kids under the age of 10 have the highest incidence rate in the state. Let's think about this, all right? From a tox standpoint, it's not the molecule that's a poison. It's in basic tenet of modern toxicology, it's the dose that makes the poison. How much you're exposed to, what was the route of exposure, was it dermal, oral, inhalation, it makes a big difference. In terms of permethrin, it's almost over 1,000 times more toxic to a tick than a person. People are big, ticks are little, doesn't take a whole lot to knock them off. EPA now has a position that permethrin-treated clothing poses no harm to infants, children, pregnant women, and then they extended that to nursing mothers. And their criteria certainly are conservative. And the reason for this is that permethrin, unlike other classes of insecticides like phosphate insecticides like diazon, once that hits your skin, it's instantly in your bloodstream on its way to your nervous system. But these pyrethroids like permethrin, they have really, really low dermal absorption, and whatever small amounts absorbed is metabolized very quickly. You can take a urine sample from a person that had permethrin on their skin, and the metabolites are going to show up in their urine sample, 3 or 4 hours later. So it's metabolized very quickly. The exception here is kitty cats. Their little livers can't detoxify permethrin, so if you're getting a product to treat your pets, there are dog-specific products that contain permethrin. You wouldn't want to put that on your kitty cat, okay? If you do, you just might see your cat, salivating a lot or going into convulsions because they can't handle it. But even if you do treat your dog with something like permethrin, or if you treat, your clothing, once it's dry, it's safe for the cats. So, in terms of persistence, if you treat clothing with permethrin, it'll keep its activity through 6 washings, okay? Or about 40 days. So it'll eventually break down by sunlight. But it's not that water soluble. There's a company called Insect Shield, and they sell clothing that's already treated with permethrin. And it keeps its activity through 70 washings, basically the life of the garment, all right? And I tell people, treat your footwear about every 4 weeks. Put that in your phone in your calendar as a reoccurring appointment. So once a month, time to treat my shoes. And because the importance of treating footwear is that those Nymph Stage ticks that are the size of a poppy seed, that are responsible for 85% of all of our problems, they're down in the leaf litter. The first place they attach to is your shoes, okay? So permethrin, hands down, it is the most effective thing. I think people here on the Cape should be wearing it year-round. I believe that seriously. But a lot of people are getting the message, and we're seeing it in the case data, the lack of cases, which I'm happy to talk about. Now, if you want all the gory details on this stuff, I received a grant from Cape Cod Healthcare, and I made 10 YouTube videos, and they're on our website, capecod.gov, and so that you can pull up a playlist, and so there's one on tick identification, how to submit a tick for testing, and there's a video on permethrin. We do a demonstration on how to correctly apply it. We talk about how safe it is, how effective it is, and I received a call last year from the Appalachian Mountain Club. They wanted permission to use our permethrin video is their in-house training tool. And the guy who contacted me said, Larry, there's a number of videos out there on permethrin clothing, but you nailed it. You're a rock star. And so I was really happy to get that piece of news. So it made my day. So there's a lot of good information out there on our website. And pet protection. There's a lot of over-the-counter products that are available for pets. Canine Advantix 2 for dogs seems to be slowly being replaced by that Seresto collar, because instead of 1 month of tick control, you get 8 months of activity. So I've talked to a lot of dog owners, and they're very happy. But I tell people, before you embark on anything at all for your pets, talk to your veterinarian first, okay? Because depending on the age of the pet, the overall health of the pet, that may suggest one type of thing over another. And then finally, yard protection. I have never seen so much advertising like by Mosquito Squad, Mosquito Mary, Mosquito Joe, Mosquito Mike about doing yard sprays. And we'll come in and spray your yard, 6 or 7 times from April to October. And it's like, what's one to do? And they're advertising, all natural products, which we know based on the research, things like cedar oil or rosemary oil, they just aren't effective. So there are products like permethrin that are available, and some companies are using them. They're safe. We still don't have a firm handle on how effective a yard spray is at reducing the incidence rate of disease. So there's a 5-year study that's in play right now to sort out yard sprays, yes or no. But I do get calls from people a lot like, should I be going with Mosquito Squad or Mosquito Mary? Well, it's a buyer beware situation. You want to ask them what product they intend to use, where they're going to spray it. If they say they're going to spray it over the entire lawn, they don't know what they're talking about. And people have conveyed that to me, that it's the perimeter of the yard, that's the edge. And again, there's information on our website. In terms of the number of sprays, it's not April to October. It's like mid to late May, spray number 1, mid to late June, spray number 2, and that covers that window of Nymph Stage activity. And then maybe, depending on the situation, maybe a spray in mid to late October. So it's 3 sprays max, if that. So let's see, is there anything I didn't cover? Because we didn't talk about this before the meeting. But I was just wondering if there was anything burning on your mind that I should have.
What's the turnover when you send the tick in?
Oh, when you submit a tick for testing, once they receive that tick, you're going to get your tick report in 2 to 3 business days. Yeah, very quick turnaround.
Can I ask a question about that?
Yeah.
So they identify what the tick carried and what possibly might be in your body. Is there now a cure because they know that?
No, they don't make a medical recommendation like you should be getting a prescription for doxycycline, or they just say this is what we found in the tick, and that tick was probably on you for 3 days.
But is there a cure for any pathogen that they carry?
Doxycycline, antibiotics, if you catch Lyme early, so if you're correctly diagnosed and treated promptly, it seems that people can be cured with 2 to 3 weeks of treatment. But if you're, let's say, they don't figure out it's Lyme disease until you've had it for like a couple months, then it seems to be a lot harder to get you back on track. But again, that's very controversial in the medical community.
My daughter is a nurse in New London, Connecticut, and she, back in the late 90s, she took a job part-time in this doctor's office in Lyme, Connecticut. I don't know if you heard about it. He was preparing a serum for Lyme disease. And he'd have people come in. There was a section that would get the placebo and those that would get the real drug. I asked her, I said, Michelle, did you take the real drug or the placebo? She said, I took the real thing. She came down with MS. The doctor said it wasn't caused from that.
You're talking about the vaccine?
The vaccine, he was trying to do the vaccine. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, what I've read is that that the issues that because a lot of people were getting together to sue the pharmaceutical, and when all those cases of like causing arthritis, when all of those cases were analyzed, they couldn't tie it to the vaccine.
That's what they said.
So the vaccine apparently was safe. It's just it's available. I mean, a company could.
I've never heard of. He went out of business. And she goes on and comes down with MS, and they said no, it's not related.
Yeah,
It seemed like it was just not
sure.
MS is not my family.
I'm not questioning whether there's a cause effect there. And that's not my gig.
Do you think they'll ever have a serum?
Pfizer is in phase 3 clinical trials with a candidate vaccine. And unfortunately, one of the biggest participation was on Martha's Vineyard in Nantucket, because they have more cases. The incidence rate of Lyme there is higher than any place else in the visible universe. But the company that contracted to do the work didn't follow the protocol from Pfizer, so it invalidated a third of the database. So they have to go back to square one. So submitting a package to FDA for a vaccine probably isn't going to happen till 2025, 2026. So permethrin for the time being.
So, a few things. I Googled it on Amazon and I did find it on Amazon.
What can't you find on Amazon?
My husband worked everything, but, so, as long as it has permethrin, you would recommend any of those? As long as
Yeah, it doesn't matter the brand or formulation.
Okay.
There's water-based pump sprays, there are aerosols, there's a half a dozen or more different brands. All of those products contain 0.5% permethrin. So it doesn't matter which one you use.
Other thing, when my kids were younger, I remember them saying when they got bit by a tick bite, and that's probably why Kaylee picked up on that too. She's smart anyway, but to bring the tick in. So I know that down in pediatrics, I don't know what they tested for. Now, maybe they do test for more.
No, they
Or
don't.
you're just saying UMass is the only place that tests,
There are other labs out there that do tick testing.
not the doctor's offices.
No, they might identify it, but they're not going to test it for pathogens. You have to have some pretty specialized equipment to do that. They might just look at it and say, and verify it's a tick, without even maybe being able to tell you if it's a deer tick versus a dog tick versus a Lone Star tick.
So is it only the deer tick that transmits Lyme disease?
Yes.
Okay, so even though the Lone Star tick might feed on a wild turkey that could be carrying Lyme disease,
Yeah,
it
it's.
will not transmit.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems in information out there, is that there are people that do research and they'll test mosquitoes and find the Lyme bacteria. They'll test it and find it in fleas. They find it in other species of ticks. And I've had a couple people tell me, up in my face, that they got their Lyme disease from a mosquito bite, and I don't know what the heck I'm talking about. And I tell people that bacteria has adapted to that deer tick and its specific gut chemistry environment. So the gut chemistry of one tick is not the same as the gut chemistry of another tick. So deer ticks have a gut chemistry that this bacteria finds it can thrive there. And so I tell people, just because you find a pathogen in a bug like a mosquito or something that maybe picked it up feeding on a turkey, doesn't make it a vector, okay? So deer ticks are the vector, but other things can pick it up from feeding on mice and whatnot. But that's a good question.
So if you have a tick on you, even though it might not be carrying Lyme disease, it's not a deer tick, it could be carrying one of the other pathogens.
Sure.
So if you have a tick on you, then it would be wise to have it sent to a lab to see what it has, what it could be carrying.
If I had a tick on me and suspected it was on me for more than 24 hours, getting a tick tested, that's a layup. That's $50 I wouldn't hesitate to spend. But if I found the tick on me just attached, within a couple hours, probably not. But what I probably would do is save the tick, because you can analyze that tick like 100 years later, because DNA is quite stable. So I tell people, even if you don't test it today, let's keep it, see how you feel, and the minute maybe you're not feeling like yourself and going to have a conversation with your doctor, then you can always get it tested.
So just a follow-up to that?
Yep.
as I said before, so once you identify what pathogens the tick has, then it's up to you to go to your doctor and say, I was exposed to these,
Yes,
and they may have some form of treatment.
they might.
Okay, great.
So what I usually do is put them in packing tape, and I just throw them away. But I do keep them in the packing tape and document it, what day, whatever, if I pull it off myself.
You bet.
Is that okay? But my question is going to be, that's what I do. My question is going to be, is that okay for sending it off to the lab in the packing tape?
It slows the lab technicians down.
Okay.
They have to apply a solvent to dissolve the glue on the tape.
Okay.
So if you just put the tick in a little snack-sized plastic bag,
Okay.
that's better.
All right, perfect.
All ticks that are nymph stage and adults have 8 legs. When ticks hatch out, they're 6-legged larvae.
Okay, so like if you take it off fully, but like you notice, like in the past, like you put it like in like a plastic bag, and you put it in a plastic bag, like, and like look at it, see how many. If there's a leg still in you, or like the part missing, does that carry any pathogens on it?
No, I mean the legs aren't going to get inside you, but they've got a mouth part that's fairly long. It's like a beak, and so but if that gets in you and breaks away, it's not going to cause disease. It's like a wood splinter.
My question is, how long can ticks survive without feeding on a host? I'm worried about these gorilla ticks crawling around my house looking for me. How long can they go without feeding?
Deer ticks, the ambient humidity inside of a home is too low for them to survive very long. So within a couple days, they're toast. But out in the wild, when an adult stage deer tick emerges in September, that tick can sit there until the following May before it runs out of steam, because they're not expending any energy by just being, sitting there. They're just waiting for you to do the work. So ticks can go for a long time. I mean, these deer ticks have a two-year life cycle. I mean, so they have a lot of downtime when they're not feeding. Gorilla ticks, yes.
The nymphs can transmit disease as well.
Oh yeah. The only stage that doesn't transmit disease are the larvae. As soon as they hatch out from their eggs, they're pathogen free.
I think at this point, everybody's asked their questions and Larry made his presentation. So if anyone has anything further that you want to add to, or Larry, you want to recap, we can do it at this point.
Are there any other questions?
I feel lucky we were here to get that.
Yeah.
That was
Thank you.
informative.
So, tick checks and permethrin treated clothing and footwear. Number 1, protect your yard, the perimeter, okay, with not an all-natural product, because it's not, statistically they work better than water, but not by much. And you got to consider protecting your pets. So it's 1, 2, 3.
Great job, Larry.
Thank you.
Scholarship recipients, and they might like to say a few words, or maybe their folks want. But again, we appreciate it, and thank you for supporting the Tables Point Improvement Association. Peter?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. As part of the Taylor's Point Association, our mission is we're a 501c3 charitable organization. But as part of our mission is we have an educational function by providing academic scholarships for Warren students from Warren High School and Upper Cape Tech Regional Vocational Technical School since 2009. So today we have 2 families that are here. Of the 4 that were given the awards, Carissa Blake from Upper Cape Tech and Gianna Cavallis could not be here today. Gianna is already at school down at Johnson in Wales, going to school for culinary arts. And Callista is working, she couldn't get out of work, but we have 2 other families here. And anybody knows Phil and Kiki Terra, you know, that name is synonymous around town for many, many years, with Phil being in public safety as our police lieutenant, and Kiki in physical therapy for many years and very involved in organizing events in town. And their daughter Olivia is one of our recipients. So Olivia, would you like to come up? And please explain about yourself and what you're going to be doing at school.
So I'll be going to New England Institute of Technology, and there I will be doing a vet tech program for 18 months. The plan is to go there for 18 months, work a little bit, and do their bachelor's degree, which is online and self-paced, and then open up a hydrotherapy. That's what I'll be doing.
Does anybody have any questions of Olivia? All right, then you may sit down. Our second recipient this morning is from the Ryder family. Claudine and Chris have been Claudine's from Falmouth, but managed to be a good-born resident. Chris over the years, and they've been married a very long time. In fact, Chris and I went to high school together. Chris is a patrolman with the Warren Police Department for many years and has protected our community very well. But their daughter, Callie, is our second recipient.
My name is Kaylee. I'm going to St. Vincent College in the fall for nursing. So I'm going to hopefully graduate in 2027 with my BSN and go right into hopefully a hospital nearby. I'm thinking either ER, pediatric nursing. And yeah, I just want to say thank you to the Taylor's Point Association for the surprise of the scholarship. I found out I won it on the day of graduation, which I didn't even apply for, so thank you to Uncle Joe and Peter Meyer, all you guys, for giving me this opportunity, so thank you.
We have to thank Donna Cox and the Bourne Scholarship Committee who have been involved with our scholarships for many, many years. Some of our recipients do contact me from time to time. Matt Heath's daughter was one of them. So, I can remember Joe, who else? Michael Carrera is another one. And our next aviation pilot. Our organization has been involved for a long time, between not only scholarships, but we also participate in the Bourne Food Pantry. Every year we ask our residents to donate a canned good to our bin, which we bring down to the Bourne Food Pantry. And we also do give a monetary donation as well every year. So, we're in the community. We're trying to do more and more. If anybody has any questions or anything else. All right, then. Well, thank you for coming out. Coming over the bridge on a Saturday morning when it's it's so busy. And I know kids this time of year, you don't want to be on the beach, or they're working, or they're getting ready for college. So, congratulations. Good luck at school. In the fall. And make us proud. Don't forget us.
As parents, we talk, or you can tell, we appreciate it, because I don't know if any of you know the cost of college these days, but where St. Anselm's is just under $70,000 a year, which I don't understand, but it's going to be all worth it in the long run. So everything is appreciated a lot, and I know that Haley and Olivia worked really hard both at school and in the community, so it's nice to be recognized by the local community too. So thank you from all of us.
Can I just say one thing?
Yes.
So we're really excited that we have a brand new website. It's Taylor's Point Association. All right, we're gonna try to get some of this information, you know, when you get home, you can just www.Taylor's Point Association, and we're gonna do newsletters. It's exciting for us because it's another way to digitally communicate, and we'd like your input from the site too. When it's not fully up and running yet, please take a look at it.
Thank you.
Don't forget the food pantry. It's very important, folks. There's a lot of needy people out there. Please support this. We do. Thank you.